So let's refresh this. Please, if you have questions, you can actually ask. Today is an interactive question. I'm just going through all this just to refreshing our memory from the last thing that was taught. Okay. Let me go into the teams. All right, so for all the sites that are actually associated to a teams, you'll be able to see them if you're a member of the site. So for this, that is digital initiative public relations, for example, now you can see that this is the first team that we have here. We go down to mark 8 project team, you'll be able to see that as well. Yeah. So for every site that actually has those teams, definitely there's a team. There's actually a team associated. So if you go to Microsoft team and you're a member of that particular site, you'll be able to see the sites associated. Let me open those team sites for other informations. So for our communication sites, you'll not see open in Teams. Like this one that we have a communication site, you only see view sites. But for a team site, you'll actually be able to actually open in Teams. You'll be able to open the site in a Teams. Then as well, you'll be able to view the site itself. So it has two things associated. So it shows that this is actually a Microsoft 365 group. It's different from this. It's just a communication site. And for this, under the general, you can see that we have more info about the site. We have the basic info like the name of the site, the description, just like the way we have it in our communication sites. Then this has an email address. So the difference between a communication site, a team site, this has an email address. For a communication site, there is no email address that is actually associated with the site. So for every member of the site, or any member of this group, if I send an email to this particular mailbox, they're going to actually see the email. They won't receive it in their own inbox, but because this group, they are actually a member of this group, they'll be able to see it in their Outlook as well. So activity remains the same. The membership also remains the same. Then for settings here, under settings, if you remember for our communication sites, we have just few things under our settings, which is external file sharing and sensitivity label. But for this site that is actually associated to team, if you go to settings, we have more things. For example, now, under emails, we have let people outside the organization be able to email the sites. Now, if I actually check this box, for example, now, and save the settings here, what happened is that when somebody that is not part of the organization sends an email to this email address here, then the group mailbox is going to receive the email address. It's going to actually receive the email that was sent. But if this is unchecked, definitely the person will actually receive an NDR. Then again, the send copies of Teams email and events to Teams members invoice. So now, if you notice that most of the members in the organization, they don't pay attention to the group mailbox that is actually associated to this email, for example, now, you can actually check this option that any emails that is sent to this mailbox, let every member receive the email in their own inboxes. So they will receive the emails in their inboxes once this option is checked, for example, now. So this remains the same, the way we have in the communication sites for external file sharing. So you want people to just let the sharing be between is a new and existing guest or anyone in the organization, existing guest or only people in the organization. Then the last part is actually a team's conversation. So since this site is actually a part of the team, since it's actually a part of a team, so you have the option to actually select checking that. You want to allow members to be able to edit their sent message. So if they sent message inside this team, they've sent the message and you want them to be able to actually edit the message, then that option is actually needs to be checked. Then again, you want to allow members to delete their sent messages. So after sending a message, maybe they did a mistake, they send a message, and you want them to be able to delete the sent message. You have to check this option. So that's another difference between team sites and communication sites. They said, let me show us quickly. Please, if you have a question, you can ask a question from everything we've been discussing so far from the beginning of the class and in February. You can ask questions. Something is not clear. We have experts on the call who are available to answer our questions. All right, I will jump to the next tab here, which is deleted sites. Now, when I go here in the active site and I delete a site, for example, okay, let me delete the site. So you see a disclaimer that says, if you delete the site, users will not be able to actually access the site. So let's assume this site that was deleted here is actually my root site in the organization. Users are trying to, or let me call it a departmental site, for example. Now, maybe the IT department, this is where they do their collaboration, and the site was deleted. Now, a user, I worked with your client, and the client was like, we're trying to access some of those files, and he's saying that error 404, the file is not available. They try to go into the site itself, the site is not available. So most of the times when you see error 404 with that error, you don't actually need to panic. What you need to do is just tell the SharePoint administrator or the global administrator, can you navigate to your sites and deleted sites and confirm if you have sites that are actually been deleted. So if the site is sitting here, if this site has actually been shared with a member of the team, for example, now, and they try to access it, they'll be getting that error 404. The file or the site is not available, something like that. So what you do is that you have two options here. For every deleted site, the site actually is retained for 90 days. So in this place here, in the deleted site, this site will stay here for 90 days. After 90 days, it will be deleted, although it can be restored. How can it be restored? There's what called point in time restore. So this can actually be restored by Microsoft after 14 days. So after this 93 days here, another 14 days, the site is still available on the Microsoft server. When you raise a support request with Microsoft, if it's still within the 14 days, they'll be able to restore the site for you. But after 14 days, the site is gone and all the data that you have on the site is gone. So two things you can do here. You can either restore when this site was deleted, obviously by mistake, you can restore the site. Then if it is a site that you don't actually want the information on the site, you don't want all the data on the site, you want to actually delete it permanently. You use this permanent delete. Maybe you want to use the same URL again, but for another site or for something else. But because the site is available, it's not going to allow you to use the same URL. It's not going to allow you to use the same URL. So you have to actually permanently delete the site. So I'm going to restore the site because I'm going to use it for something else. So again, please, if you have question, you can ask your question. If you have question, you can ask a question. So this site has been restored. Awesome, it has been installed. So let's quickly go into policies. So for policies, we have two things under policies. We have sharing and access control. So everything we're seeing at the active site level, when it talks about sharing, when we open the site and it talks about this external file sharing, this is where it's coming from under sharing here. So this is actually where you control the external sharing for your SharePoint or your OneDrive. So it's actually at the organization level. So the admin of the tenants has the opportunity to actually control, okay, this site or everything we are doing in the organization, do we want anyone to just have access to our files, our folders? So that's actually what the time is. And one thing you have to take note of is, if you notice, as I'm reducing the SharePoint, the OneDrive was also reducing here. What this means is that the OneDrive is actually depending on the SharePoint permission. Since for SharePoint, I have the least permissive here. If I try to increase the OneDrive, it's not going to happen. But for SharePoint, I can actually take SharePoint up and OneDrive remains the same, and I'll be able to actually take the OneDrive as well. But as SharePoint is coming down, OneDrive is also coming with it too. So if I want the most permissive, for example, I want anyone to be able to actually share files and folder, and they don't require link to sign in, then I can leave the sharing permission at the most permissive. But if I want just new and existing guests, that is actually different from anyone, because a guest is somebody that is actually part of your Active Directory. So this person has actually been signed into your Active Directory as a guest user or external guest user. So if I go down here, so this will become the new permission. So if somebody is not a guest, is not a new guest or an existing guest in the organization, then the person will not be able to have access to the file from this organization. But if I want to just be as existing guest only, so that means I don't even want to onboard any new guest into the tenant to be able to have access to files or folders in my organization. Then if I want the least permissive, just only the people in my organization, I don't want external sharing at all in the organization, then I use only people in my organization. And this actually has its purpose. So if your organization that you have a lot of proprietary informations that you're dealing with, I don't want those documents to be shared externally. Even the user in the organization cannot even share it with their own personal email accounts, maybe their Gmail or their Outlook account. Then what you do is that you maintain the external sharing as a least permissive, so that it is only people in your organization that will be able to have access to the information. Those information, those files, those folders will not be shared externally to anyone. So if you notice, because this is at the least permissive, automatically what happened is that more external sharing settings is actually grayed out. But if I take it up a bit, this is enabled for me. So I'll be able to see more informations about the external sharing. Like for example, now, the first one talks about limit external sharing by domain. So let's assume I have a sister company and I only want the sister company to actually have I only want users of my company to be able to share information, files, and folders with the sister company. Then I can select this option, limit external sharing by domain. This gives me the option to actually add a domain. So I can actually say, okay, I want to allow specific domain. So maybe the sister company, let's call it golive.com, for example. Then I save. So what it means is that users in my organization can only share with users from this goline.com. That's if I want to limit the external sharing by domain. Or if I want to allow only users in specific security groups to share externally. Now, we discussed when we were discussing our groups, we talk about security groups. So for only users in a specific security group, I'm not sure I have security groups on this tenant. Let me see. I'm not sure I have it because I've not actually played on this tenant before. So for this, now I have to create a security group. Let me go to my admin home. Teams in group, active teams in group. Let me add a security group here. Add a group. Select security next. Let me call it special team. Special team. Next. So if I want to add a particular Azure AD role base, I can decide to do that. I don't need that yet. Create a group. Enclose. So I have a special team group here. So let me go back here. Manage security group. special team. Let me go back and refresh. So guys, if you have questions, please feel free to ask. All right, I have my special team here. Save. So what happened is that it's only users in these security groups that will be able to actually share externally. Then another option I have for my external sharing is guests must sign in using the same account to which sharing invitation was sent. Now, this is actually a very common scenario in support. For example, now I shared information with users from, let's assume, a user from my sister company. I shared a file or folder. Now, when they try to access the folder or the file, what happened is that it's going to tell them access denied. It's going to tell them access denied. Why? Because something happened. If they go to their Outlook, for example, let me sign into my Outlook. If they go to their Outlook and click on that link that was shared with them, and the link tried to open on the browser, what happened is that maybe a different account that is signing from the account that the information was shared, the file or the folder was shared, was actually on the browser. That's when they will start getting that error. So what they need to do is to actually sign out and sign in with the account that they used to receive that particular file or folder that was shared. This is actually what's used to control that. So for this, they will not be able to open the file or the folder that was shared with a different account. It must be with the account that they use, and they must sign in before they can actually share check the folder or the file. Then you want guests to be able to share items they don't own. I have folders in my OneDrive, I have files in my OneDrive, and I shared with a guest in my organization. Now, if this option is not checked, what happened is that the guest that I share the information with, the guest will not be able to share the items. Why? Because they are not the original owner of the items. But if I allow this, what it means is that the guest can share the same items, the same information, the file, the folder with whoever they feel deemed to share with. Then the second to the last under the more external settings is the guest access to sites or OneDrive. So let's say, for example, now I shared a particular OneDrive with a guest. I want them to, we're having a project and the project is going to take 30 days to complete. Now, I want them to be able to have access to those files, the folders for 30 days. So I have the option to actually set it here. That's 30 days. After 30 days, they will not be able to have access to it. Maybe I know that, okay, maybe after the project, I might forget to stop the sharing, to stop the access, for example, now. So the best practice is for me to actually set it here. So after sharing the file, the folder, or the item with the person, I know that the project is going to be for 30 days. After 30 days, I don't want them to have access to all the information for the project again. Then I configure that here. Then lastly, people who use a verification code must re-authenticate after many days. So now, in sharing in SharePoint, you have the option to configure people must actually use a verification code. So when they use a verification code to actually re-authenticate, I want them to be able to re-authenticate again, maybe after 5 days. So they have access to the file, the folder for 5 days. Then after 5 days, I want them to re-authenticate again. Then these settings, we are actually need to configure the settings. And whatever I'm doing, you see the save option here. You save, then it's going to tell you save. So that has been saved. So that's about more information about external sharing settings. Please, if you have questions, you can actually go ahead. This session is actually an interactive session for today. Do you have any questions so far? All right, let me continue. So more on sharing. So we have for files and folder link. Yeah. So for file and folder link here, just the same what we have for our external sharing settings here. We want specific people, only people that the user specify. So if this setting is actually configured at this level, these settings, remember, this is actually at the organization level. So if I'm a user in my organization and the admin has configured that any file or folder link that I share must be accessible only by specific people. So it's only those specific people that will be able to have access to the shared files or the shared folders, be it coming from the SharePoint or from the OneDrive, or only people in my organizations. So this is restricted to people in my domain. So if somebody is not in my domain, then the person will not be able to have access to the file or the folder. So those are some of the things you check. You saw that a user shared a particular documents with user in another organization, and they say the users in the other organization cannot actually access the file or the folder links. So this is something that the administrator needs to check. Oh, what is the current settings? Is it only people in the organization that should have access to the file and the folder link? Then anyone with the link, that's actually the most permissive level. So anyone with the link should be able to open it. So I don't want to actually stress the users out. Let me just configure this, but everything has a safe side. So there are reasons why you can put that anyone with the link should be able to access it. But for best practice, it's only usually within the organization. Then if you go down a bit, you will see choose a permission that is selected by default for sharing link. So for any sharing link, do I want people to be able to edit, or do I want them to just view only? So for view only, that means that they have least permissive level for it. They will be able to view whatever has been shared with them, but they will not be able to edit. Maybe they want to make comments on it, add informations to it. They will not be able to do that. But if it's on edit, that means you're giving them a right to be able to add to what has been shared with them, or be able to edit, of course, add informations, remove informations, and all that. Then choose expiration and permission option for anyone with links. So now, for this now, for anyone with links now, you want to choose, okay, when should this link expire? So you can always configure this that, okay, after 45 days, the link should expire for anyone with the link. So as the link is being distributed, after 45 days that has been configured, the link will actually be expired and nobody will be able to have access to the link. So for the links, for example, now, so for is the link giving them access to your file or the link giving them access to your folder? If it's giving them access to your file, okay, what is the permission? View and edit or just view? So you can always configure this, okay, let them be able to view only, or let them be able to view and edit. And for folder, do you want them to be able to view, edit, and upload? That means upload new items, new files inside the folder, or you just want them to be able to just view what's are the items inside the folder. So you do that settings here. And for anything you're doing, you must always remember to actually save the settings. You save whatever you're doing. Then finally, for other settings, you have show owners the name of people who view their files in OneDrive. So for this, the owner of the file, the owner of the folder will be able to actually view those that are actually view the file. Then let the site owners choose to display the names of people who view file or pages in the SharePoint. Then lastly, use shortcut links for sharing files. So any configuration you've done here, you must save it for it to actually take effect. Must save it for it to actually take effect. Please, do you have any questions so far? Any question, guys? Any question, guys? All right. So I'll be moving to the next one, which is access control. So Access control is actually to restrict how users are allowed to access content in SharePoint or OneDrive. So, for example, now, like the first one talks about unmanaged devices. Now, most organizations they tend to assign laptops or devices that new users that they are onboarding into the organization. They tend to assign them. So for any of the laptops or the devices, the workstation that has been assigned, it is usually joined to the company's domain. Now, for unmanaged devices, these are like BYOD, bring your own device. Like these are the devices that are not actually joined to the company's domain. Maybe their personal laptop, their phones, of course, is not actually joined to the company's domain. So for SharePoint OneDrive, for any unmanaged device, you have the settings for them because you want to be able to control access. Okay, I don't want users to be able to access anything except on their company's laptop. So if they try to sign into their SharePoint using the SharePoint application on their mobile devices on the phone, or they try to sign in using their personal laptop or devices, I don't want them to be able to do that. You can actually block the access here because those devices are not actually managed by the organization. They're personal device owned by actually the users that is coming to the organization. But I want them to be able to have full access from desktop app to mobile app and on the web. Let them be able to access their file. They must maybe carry their, maybe the organizations, what they assign to them is the desktop and the users cannot be moving it up and down from home to the office. It's not possible. So you can actually allow full access from on managed devices. So they can access the SharePoint, the OneDrive from the mobile application on the web. They can access it on the desktop application as the case may be. Then you want to allow limited access. Okay, you don't want those users to be able to use their mobile device, like the phone, for example, now, because we have the SharePoint mobile that you can actually download on your on your Play Store, on your Google Play Store or the Apple Store. And from those devices, you can actually access the SharePoint. But if you don't want them to do that, you can actually allow limited access by only allowing them to have access with on the web only. They will not be able to use the mobile application to access SharePoint or OneDrive information. Then the next one talks about the idle session sign out. So for the idle session, somebody is working and probably they stepped away from the system. So you want to be able to configure, okay, how long should you want them to be able to be signed out? Maybe they are not, there's no activity on the SharePoint, on the OneDrive, and they are actually not using the office device. They are using like on my a personal device or even the office device itself. You want them to be able to maybe you want the session to be signed out for them. So you can actually configure, okay, when there is inactivity for more than 30 minutes, for example, now sign the user out so that no other person will actually gain access. Maybe the user just step away, forget to lock the system in the office, and somebody else wants to have access to those files. So you can actually configure the settings here, idle session timeout. So once the session is idle for over 30 minutes, there's nothing that is happening on the SharePoint, on the OneDrive. You want them to be signed out automatically. You can set this and you set the notice, okay, 5 minutes before the time, let them be notified that they're about to be signed out. Then the network location. Now, let's assume your organization has IP addresses that are assigned to users, for example, now, and you want users to be able to access based on network locations. You don't want them to just have access to the organization information, the SharePoint, the OneDrive. So you can actually allow, once you turn this on, you'll be able to put in the IP or the IP ranges for the users. So it's only those with the IP ranges that will be able to access informations on the SharePoint. Then the lastly, you talk about the apps that don't use modern authenticator. So we have some applications that don't use the modern authentication, like the MFA that we discussed. So if you want to allow some third-party applications or previous version of Office that they don't use those modern authentication, so you can allow, but if you don't want them, you want the security of the organization to be tight, then what you need to do is to actually block the access. So you block the access, you save. So it's actually pretty straightforward. Please, do we have questions so far? Do we have questions so far? All right. So let's go to settings. Let's go to settings. So for settings, we can see the integration of SharePoint, Streams, and OneDrive in the settings. You can actually do a different configuration. Let me talk about this quickly. The OneDrive storage limits. Now, you can actually set the default storage limit for both new and existing users who are signed a qualifying license, like they have the OneDrive. Maybe they have a subscription that has an app for OneDrive itself. So you can actually configure the default storage that they will have. And this, where do you see this? If you go to the admin center, for example, you go to users, active users. Let me pick any user. Okay, let me pick this first user. Now, if I go to the OneDrive here, for example, this will show me the default storage. So for this user now, the default storage is 1024 gig. If you go back to the SharePoint Admin Center, you discover this is the same default storage that is here. So if this actually changes here for the user as well, it's going to change. The default storage is going to change for the user as well. And you can actually, if you click on this manage default storage, for example, now it's going to actually bring us down to the same place here. So it's bringing it back to the same place here. So this actually shows that it's actually linked. You can manage the default storage for the user there. Okay, let me go back to the home. Now the home site is actually usually the intranet site, the communication site for the user. Now I can decide that, okay, I want a particular URL to be my home site. Let's say, for example, let me jump into this SharePoint. Let me pick an active site, for example. If I go to this communication site, this is actually currently the default for the organization. Now I can pick another site and make it let me pick this demo, for example. Let me copy these and take it to save. Oh, it's a team site, so it's gonna work. Let me quickly create, sorry. Site owner. Let me make myself the site owner and finish. Okay, let me refresh this. Okay, let me pick this. Preparation in the site. Copy the link straight then. Paste it here. So you see this guy can be set as your home site. Let me save. So if I go to my app launcher and select SharePoint, So that automatically becomes my intranet site for becomes a landing site for my intranet site. So when I have an upsite, for example, so this site becomes the intranet site. So please, if you have a question, you can ask a question, please. If you have a question, please ask a question. You have a question? Anyone? Okay. The notification settings is talking about allowing the SharePoint mobile apps to receive notification. So if there's a SharePoint site activity and you have the SharePoint mobile apps, so this is actually where you actually configure. You want the SharePoint mobile app to receive notification. So if there's any activity happening, maybe somebody added the document library, somebody added a folder, a file, and all that, you'll be able to receive the notifications here. And the next one talks about the changes in terms of page. So if you want users to be able to create a new modern page, you want them to allow commenting on modern pages. Like for example, now, like the HR for an organizations might want to wish somebody in the organization a happy birthday, for example. So they should be able to create modern pages where they can actually wish the person, and people should be allowed to also comment on the pages that are created. Then the next one talks about site creations. So for our site creation, for example, now you can configure if you want users to create sites from SharePoint, from OneDrive, the PM, the PowerShell, the REST API. But if you don't want that, you can simply uncheck this and you save it. Then users will not be able to create sites in the SharePoint. So now the storage limit. So our storage limit is actually into two. We have the automatic storage and we have the manual storage. Now, if you go back to our SharePoint admin center here, now all these sites, because this is currently set to automatic, that means that any site that is created will take from this 1.2 terabyte here that we have. But you can configure in such a way that you want some sites to have specific limits. For example, you have a thing that you want to create, you want to create, you want to set a manual limit for each. If you click on save, for example, now data save, if you go back to the SharePoint to create a site, it will give you the option to actually set the limits. Let me create a team site. Okay, this is communication, a team site. Let me set a team site. Site owner. Next, let me add a member. That has no provision. It should ask me for the storage to be allocated to that site. Let me refresh this. Let me take it back to manual. Okay, I'll confirm whether it's not giving me the storage. Usually it should give me the storage. Which storage do I want to allocate to the site? Okay, the site has been created. Allocate the storage. The general will be able to see the storage. This wasn't showing because it was on automatic before. So be able to allocate the maximum storage. I only want 2 gig storage for this and save. So that's about the team storage. And the Microsoft Streams itself. So the Microsoft Streams actually works with the SharePoint OneDrive. Whenever you do a video, maybe you have a Teams meeting, for example. Now, usually the Teams meeting usually stored in a Microsoft Stream before until it was now switched on to SharePoint by the Microsoft. So with the new Microsoft Stream on SharePoint, users can find and work with videos like they do with other files. So they can actually set it. So you want the default destination for Stream App Launcher type to be, is it automatic? So it talks about if you come to the App Launcher here, you have Microsoft Stream here. That's Microsoft Stream here. So you want the default destination for the Stream App Launcher tower. Do you want it to automatically switch to Stream on SharePoint, which is actually when recommended, or you want it to be Stream on SharePoint or Stream on Classic? So you have the option to actually do those settings here. So the same thing goes for the OneDrive, the notifications, the OneDrive rotation, the OneDrive storage, then the OneDrive sync. So you want to show the sync button for the OneDrive on the website. You want to allow syncing only on the computer joined to specific domain. You want to block upload of specific file types. So you can always configure those. Do you have questions so far, please? Any question? So in the absence of no questions, we'll be running up to this session. So next week, Yuri will be coming up to actually take us deep dive into the SharePoint itself. So I'm going to see you guys next week. Thank you all for joining. Oh, Joseph, you have a question, please go ahead.
Good afternoon,
Good afternoon.
Emmanuel.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I just want to say this how you The last one we did, I don't think it was uploaded on SharePoint on the channel, YouTube channel.
Yeah,
Because
it's to be
when I checked to
uploaded.
practice,
It's to be
okay,
uploaded. All right. It's to be
okay,
uploaded.
thank
Thank
you.
you. You have questions? Go ahead, Johnson, please. Go ahead.
Hi, good evening, everyone. So I have a question regarding sharing. For instance, let's say a folder is being shared to certain people in the organization, but when they try to access the folder, they are unable to see the files that are in the folder. So what are the things the
Like,
administrator or whoever is sharing the file are to check? Although when they check the folder permission, it shows that the users have permission to view and also edit, but they are unable to see the files in that folder.
okay, the person that shared the folder, the person confirms that there are actually items like files in the folder.
Yes.
Then the sharing, how was the sharing done? How was the sharing done? Let me create a document, for
The
example.
I think the user gave a link out to the users to other users to be able to access the folder. So that was how he shared that particular folder.
Okay, I have this document library. Let me create a folder here inside this. Inside this folder, let me create a PowerPoint presentation inside it. So I have this folder now. The user, how did the user share? Did he share using this copy link and give it to them? Or he actually shared with them by clicking on this share? So is it that the user copied the link
Mhm.
or share or manager says? If you click on this share, for example, now, you'll be able to type them. Okay. So this gives us another option here. So if you notice, this is currently grayed out, anyone. So what the people in the organization is actually like the highest permissive level. And the people with so is it sharing internally with the people inside the organization? You have to check first, or just people external. How did he share? Did he share using either use a share, or you can use the same thing as this share button and type in their email address of the people. So you have to actually find out how the doc or how the folder was shared. So from there we'll be able to know. So you can confirm that with the admin. How was the folder shared itself? Because eventually you'll be able to, so the people that you put their email there, they will receive an email. They will just click on that link. It will take them straight to the folder and they will have access to all the files inside the folder. I don't know if you get that. So confirm
Yes, I
how
did.
it will share.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So if you click on the manager, you'll be able to see, okay, who are the people that have access. You can even give links. So the links that you're given will, so if you just go ahead to just copy or just come here and copy link and share with them, they will not even be able to see the folder because it's not actually shared with them. So they will not be able to see what's inside the folder. They only have
Fine.
links, yes. They
Okay.
only have links
All
there.
right.
So they have to actually share, use the share option to share with them. Then they'll be able to see it. I hope
All
that's
right.
clear.
Thank you. Yes, it is.
You're welcome. Any other question? All right, in the absence of no other questions, thank you all for joining today's session. So we'll see you next week. Here we'll be jumping in. She'll be taking us deep dive into SharePoint itself. So thank you so much. Bye for now.
Thank you. Thank you, boss. Appreciate
Bye.
it.